Hey friends, it's Cammy. What's this? 2 videos in 2 weeks? Don't get excited, I batch recorded, hence the same shirt. I'm writing a novel, sort of. But you already knew that because you read the title of the video and your deduction skills are outstanding. Let me explain. I'm writing a novel and I'll totally be talking about it as I go and getting your input and ideas, but first, some context. I'm a writer. It's where my passion and talent overlap the most. I absolutely love doing it and I'm good at it, but I haven't been doing it much and I really need to get back to it. NaNoWriMo November seems like an apt time for that sort of thing.
Sit down and focus 'cause it's November and I'm gonna write a freaking book.
Speaking of NaNoWriMo, I tried it a couple of times and I finished it one year, but it did kind of the opposite of its intention for me. Instead of teaching me some discipline, I just got burned out and then didn't write anything for quite a while afterwards. When I did get back to writing, I was pretty prolific, writing and publishing quite a bit. But then life happened and I just kind of stopped. I tried doing other things like starting a YouTube channel that went absolutely nowhere. And then this whole trans thing happened and I was honestly pretty focused on that. And I started this channel, which has been doing pretty well. I talked last time about how disingenuous I've been feeling because I haven't been doing what I'm passionate about and how I almost shut down this channel a bunch of times, but I kept coming back because others find value in what I do, so I won't dive deeper here. Success in life lies at the intersection of passion, proficiency, and profitability. And I've often said that I have 2 marketable skills, writing and being cute on the internet. And last summer I decided I needed to get back to writing. I really need to put out a novel already. The last one I did was that NaNoWriMo project, and when I went to clean it up for publication, I found that none of it was salvageable. Like, seriously. I wrote it all so fast, I didn't take the time I need to ensure that it was any good.
Everybody knows it's impossible to write a good book in a month.
It was a post-apocalyptic fantasy steampunk story about a pair of mercenaries called for Cordite or Coin. The big bad was a classy vampire lady. So, admittedly, there were some good ideas there. Anyway, I dove into an incomplete novel idea I had and I started to flesh it out, but this thing, y'all, it's a bitch of a book. It keeps growing in the wrong places and being frustratingly blank in others. Some books come easy and some don't, and this one has definitely been the latter. I'll talk about it. Needless to say, I haven't finished it. Fast forward to now. I need to write, but honestly, it's becoming such a pain and I've been so busy working on other things like YouTube that are just not as fulfilling for me emotionally. I can't keep putting my energy into things that aren't filling me with joy. I read about how Terry Pratchett wrote 800 words a day. He churned out, on average, 2 books a year and they were all consistently good quality at only 800 words a day. For the longest time, I'd been trying for 2,000, like that's the standard of conventional wisdom. In his book on writing, Stephen King talks about the process to do 2,000 words every day. And that's always been what I aim for. And on good days, I can hit that pretty easily. However, I have issues. I don't have that many good days. Most of my days are shades of mediocre. Therefore, I don't hit 2,000 with anything that can be considered consistent. And when I don't, I get discouraged. And when I get discouraged, I feel like a failure. And when I feel like a failure, I don't write. You see the problem. But 800 words, that's super doable. Hell, I can probably write and edit that in a day, and before long, boom, novel. I mean, this script was written in a day, and it's add word count later long. That joke is so stupid. So this brings us to the meat of the video. Something happened, and now I gotta reshoot this, and the sun's going down, so hopefully things don't look too terribly different. I'm also using the onboard mic because I think the problem was my lapel mic. So this brings us to the meat of the video. This is my novel, sort of. It's a work in progress. This is the one that's been causing me issues. To help getting it to come together, I used the Blake Snyder Save the Cat method of outlining, hence the index cards. It's not a bad book if you're interested in an approachable book about screenwriting. It's certainly more approachable than Campbell's Hero with 1,000 Faces. Don't even get me started on how formula writers misunderstand the hero's journey. I'm a writing monogamist. I'm just not able to work on more than one thing at a time. And that becomes problematic when a book is being a disagreeable bitch like this one. And I can't just keep writing short form material, mostly. We'll get to that. So anyway, I'm going to chronicle the writing of my next great American novel, in that I'm an American, it'll be a novel, and it'll be pretty great if I can actually finish the damn thing. Anyway, I'm straying a bit, so let's return to the topic, and this leads to where I'd love to hear what you think. I have a few directions I can go at this point, a few different projects that I can get started on, and I'd like to hear what you think of these ideas. Up first, this one. It has the working title of Singularity Rising, though I'm not sure if I'm going to keep that title. It's a little basic. And it's a modern-day cyberpunk story, full-on Gibsonian cyberpunk, set in the world of next week. Because, let's be clear, the world we live in has already become a cyberpunk dystopia. I mean, hell, I'm biohacking myself a whole new gender. And yes, I made that joke in this video, but whatever. It tells the story of three people who come together and face off against a megalomaniacal billionaire who is developing a dangerous and illegal technology. Our heroes are Carter, a street racer who's great with cars and struggles with self-esteem issues. Samantha, a soldier who lost her legs and hearing while on duty. She has prosthetic legs and cochlear implants and just so happens to be a pretty badass cyborg fighter. And finally, we have Blaine, who is a hacker good with computers and money, but awful with interpersonal skills. The book takes place in the Boston, D.C. megacity. As the world of next week, climate change is causing flooding issues, police militarization has led to widespread civil disobedience, corporate fuckery is causing all those associated issues, etc., commentary on current social issues, and so on. It's an action conspiracy thriller type of thing. Book 2. A while back, I was working on a collection of short stories that when read together, or when read as a whole, tell a larger story. The working title is In Strange Eons, which I absolutely will be changing because I seriously don't like it, but I have to call it something. The collection is a series of cosmic horror / weird fiction tales based heavily on the works of H.P. Lovecraft and Robert Chambers, specifically the King in Yellow collection. It's great, you should read it if you haven't. The overall arc of the books is about the reawakening of the Old Ones and the prophesized war. We start in a post-apoc tale set generations after the war, and then jump back to the modern day as the Old Ones are waking up. The stories are all from a human perspective who are confused and terrified about what's happening. I have all of the stories outlined and about half of them are written, so of the potential books on this slate, this is the one that's most complete. That being said, I haven't touched it in a very long time. A handful of these stories have been published, but because why not? I'll throw up the one that hasn't on Patreon. Book the next. I don't have a working title for this one, I just keep calling it Cyberpunk Jupiter. Of all these books, this is the one with the least amount of work done on it, which doesn't make it less viable, just means that it's the newest. It's a hard sci-fi story because sci-fi is where my heart is, about a future several hundred years from now where Jupiter has been heavily colonized and industrialized. For anyone not familiar with the topic, discussion of the colonization of Jupiter is always about the space around the planet, so you don't have to be like that mansplaining idiot in the futurism group where I was discussing this idea who ignored the entire lengthy conversation, including my robust OP, to condescendingly tell me that Jupiter is a gas giant, so it can't be colonized, so I needed to start my idea from scratch and then double down on his stupidity when I told him what everyone else was talking about. Ugh. Why are men? Instead, you can be like this person. I don't know which side it's going to be on. Shitposting gold, my friend. The Jupiter of this book, the one I want to write, not the futurism thread with the one douchebag, is a dirty, brutal industrial dystopia. A handful of megacorporations run by a class of wealthy elites rule the planet and crush humans under their heels. It's not a fun place to live, but absolutely will be a fun place to write about. The story follows a recent transplant from the inner system to Jupiter to inherit the estate of a dead relative. However, when they arrive, they find the estate has been seized by one of the corps for past debt or some such nonsense. The MC is then left with few options, having spent what little they had on relocating to Jupiter. Major themes will be addressing wealth inequality and corporate wage slavery. I hope to do Upton Sinclair proud. And finally, book the last one. You may have noticed a theme of sci-fi and horror, but that's not all I do. No, madam, that's not all. The other viable book, that sounded way better in writing than it did in saying. The other viable book is one that I've been struggling to make work for absolute ages, called The Rise and Fall of the House of Pendragon, and I'm keeping that title, I like it. It's a Robert E. Howard-esque sword and sorcery tale about the life of King Arthur. We start with Merlin and Arthur's father, and then follow Arthur as he grows and changes and faces a host of enemies. I don't want to do a simple retelling of Mallory because that's like 99% of Arthurian media. I'm leaning into the myths and legends of the Isles and telling stories that are familiar to fans of Mallory but really go in their own direction. For example, there's a Quest for the Holy Grail arc, but not the way and for the reasons that Mallory or the Terrys did it. Given the subject matter and the scope, this one's going to be a beast when it's done. It'll be arranged as a series of novellas and stories, excuse me, because trying to write nearly 100 years of storyline all in one go isn't really the best approach. I've been having trouble with this one, and eventually I set it aside because I kept just slipping back into retelling Mallory, only now Cuchulainn is there too, and that's not at all what I want to do. I also kept stumbling trying to figure out how best to evoke that mist-shrouded Celtic myth style of story I want to tell. It's not because I'm not a proficient fantasy author, it's, I've written it plenty. It's just that this one doesn't want to cooperate. I'm curious which one of these gets you the most excited to read. Singularity Rising, Strange Eons, Cyberpunk Jupiter, or House of Pendragon. I encourage you to discuss down below in the place where the words go. I'm going to be writing something, so I want to try to turn this into a bit of a community type thing. Get feedback and input from you, which will then help keep me motivated and accountable, both of which will make sure that this shit actually gets written. Plus, patrons over on Patreon get to beta read chapters and stories I just decided. I think I'll leave that open to both the $2 and $5 levels. That includes these three boss bitches right here, amazing human beings. Check out my other channel, Screen Queen, where I talk movie deep dives. My most recent video is about Dune 1984. Up next is Rotor from 1987, and after that will be a breakdown of the Shaft franchise. And I know what you're thinking. Wait, there's more than just the one Shaft movie from the 70s? And yeah, there are 5 of them. With the most recent being 2019. It's kind of insane. Anyway, thanks for being my friend. Bye!